All right, we are going to record this webinar as well, and I'll send it out to anybody who couldn't make it today. And of course, if you want to forward it to anybody, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Give me 1 second here. Welcome, everybody. If you haven't introduced yourself in the chat room, please do that. I see people from all the way from the great state of Washington, of course, plenty of Florida, Kentucky, Missouri, more Missouri. I saw Evansville, Indiana, New Mexico. Incredible. Great. Robert Rose from DOC, Department of Corrections here in Florida. Welcome. Houston ISD, Illinois. Wonderful, guys. This is incredible. Thanks for everybody joining us. I saw one of our buddies from Chatham County Sheriff's Office right there in Savannah. We did a couple of FTO classes there. Anyway, welcome to the webinar. We call this Field Training Generational Differences in 2024, Advice from the Pros. We're going to have a great collaborative group from the Southeastern Field Training Officer Association. I'm Mike Schentrup. I'm here just to facilitate it. I give the voice and the venue to the true experts from all over the country. And we'll briefly introduce them. We don't want to take a lot of time, everybody introducing themselves, but we'll let you tell you where they're from. If you know me, I'm from Advanced Police Concepts. Hopefully you might have gotten some information about this webinar through an email from me or maybe through LinkedIn or something like that. But, you know, my company believes that the great men and women of law enforcement deserve the training, awesome training from the best instructors and topics that matter. And what other bigger topic is there right now and is recruitment and retention. Part of retention is how we train them in our field training officer program and how we keep our trainers motivated as well, right? If you know anything about the company, we've been all over the country. After last year, we were in 20 states live. After this year, we'll be in at least 30 states live. We're going to South Dakota for the first time, Washington, D.C., a lot of other great states all over the country. So California, hopefully. So we'll see what happens. But we're a growing company, and we're always looking for host locations. So if you want to host a class, including our advanced FTO class, right? If you'd like to host that class, just reach out to us. The QR code just takes you to our website. Of course, on the website, there's a bunch of buttons you can connect with us to. You want to shoot me a message in the chat box right now, we can reach out to you. Every host site gets free seats in the class. So all you do is provide a space. We bring all the materials. We bring the instructor. We pay for everything. You maybe give us some coffee and water and provide a space, and we give you at least 3 seats in the class and up to 5 seats free for hosting our classes. But the big news really is the third annual Southeastern Field Training Officer Association Conference. This year it's going to be in Kissimmee, Florida. If you're not familiar with Florida, which I'm sure Paul Madsen is, this is right outside of Disney World. It's being hosted at the Embassy Suites in Lake Buena Vista. It's a beautiful resort location, not far from Disney World. It starts Monday, May 13th, goes through the 15th. We're going to have a meet and greet the night before on Sunday. So if you get in Sunday, we'll have something for you as well. And this is our 3rd time doing it. It's a great opportunity for everybody. I recognize a lot of people on here who have been to the conference before. This is not just for law enforcement, it's for corrections as well, as we have some corrections people on our board. And we'd love for you to come. And I can tell you this, no better time to go to Orlando than May, probably, right? It's almost never rains, and the weather, it's not that hot yet. So it's a great opportunity if you want to get out of your area and get a little warmth. So we'd love for you to have you there. The early bird special, I think, just expired. but it's still a pretty reasonable price at $350. And the rooms right now, I think, are only $99 a night. So, and you can extend on both sides. And of course, you want to check out more about SEFTOA, go to SEFTOA.org. But let's get rid of this. Let's bring our panel back up. All right, folks, I guess I'm going to have to make you co-hosts for you to see your faces here. So we're going to do that. Once I make you a co-host, you should be able to turn your video camera on. All right, here we go. All right, good morning, everyone. All right, hey, so Jesse, I still don't see you, so I don't know if you just can't. Can I hear you at least? Everybody, test your audio. Everybody good?
I can see me.
Test.
All right, perfect. We got everybody now. All right, here, listen. This is how I want that. We've done this before, but just to kind of reiterate, I'm just going to ask a couple questions to the group, and then we'll just kind of see where the conversation takes. All right, hold on. I gotta let Jerry Hunter in. All right, but this is the first thing. I don't know if you saw that article I sent out yesterday, right? This was an incredible article to me. And Wayne, I want to hear from you first, all right? You're the most seasoned, Wayne, I think, out of everybody here. All right.
Is that a general way of saying old?
No, I saw this, and it was in the USA Today. A recent survey by Ford Motor Company found that 52% of employed people globally would be willing to take a 20% pay cut for a better work-life balance. Now, listen, Ford does this to measure not just, their employee satisfaction, they also do it to see what the future may hold for car sales and stuff like that, right? But this is the interesting part. They broke it down by generation also. All right. So baby boomers, it's a little bit before my time. Only 33% said they would take a 20% pay cut for a better work-life balance. Gen Xer, that's probably a lot of us on the screen here. 43%. So that's still pretty high to me. 20% pay cut for a better work-life balance. Millennials, 60%. 60% of millennials. Millennial is 81, born between 1981 and 1996, 80%. And the funny thing is Gen Z, slight drop, 57%, but still well over half of each of those groups, right, will take a 20% pay cut to, and we've seen this, right? We've seen the inability for us to fill overtime slots, nothing like it was when we first started and stuff like that. Wayne, when I give you those type of statistics, what are some of the things that come to mind and some of the problems that, you've heard of these because you teach these classes all over the country. What are some thoughts that come to mind?
It's just hard for me to wrap my head around taking a 20% pay cut to work less. Obviously, I'm Gen. There we go. Had to make sure Gen X, 1965, and I'm one of these folks that have always worked 2 and 3 jobs my entire career by choice. So when you think about law enforcement and you think about all the shortages, I believe I saw where the governor of the state of Louisiana just declared a state of emergency because of a shortage of law enforcement officers. How does law enforcement look at this? Would we be able to accommodate less hours for less pay and still meet the needs? And I don't think so. That's my opinion. Crime rates are soaring all over the country. And we need as many cops as we can, boots on the ground, to address these issues, well-trained police officers. But you see this nationwide. Corporations, banks, financial institutions are having a hard time getting people to come back to work, to the office, because they want to work at home. Do I object to that? No, but I don't think that fits into our profession. So to see these numbers, it's just amazing. I'm glad to see that people want a work-life balance because I really hit that hard in the classes. You have to take care of yourself and you have to take care of yourself mentally and physically. But to see these numbers, I mean, it's just amazing.
And I think it's interesting for me. It's like work-life balance to me was work, but I enjoyed it. And
Yes.
Wayne, you're probably the same way, right? So I mean, like, you know, when I stayed home for 3 days with the kids and then I worked 4 days, I couldn't wait to get back to work. I loved
Yeah.
going to work, right? I just
Right.
loved the job. So Corey, yeah, your state's really getting hit hard. Corey is works from the state police for the state of Louisiana. Corey, you're one of the training coordinators for the basic recruit class there in Louisiana, right? Oh, still can't hear you, Corey. No, all right, work on your microphone. I don't know if you sometimes those little switches there in your microphone situation kind of catch you off guard. Um, Jesse, let's go to you. So, from a big agency, you came from Louisville Metro, huge agency there in Kentucky, and you were the FTO training coordinator, and now you work for a university. Generationally, right? I guess one of the biggest questions I always have is who adapts to who, right? I think Wayne hit it on the head. He can't understand, and sometimes I can't understand these ideas of not working as much as you possibly can. How do we how do we wrap our head around it as a different generation, as a Gen Xer who may be trying to train a somebody from Gen Z?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I got you.
All right, thank you. So I think when it comes to organizationally speaking, before we break it down all the way to the level of the training officer in the car, you know, change, our crisis drives change. And as we're seeing in the chat there and through what's going on across the nation, we have a crisis with hiring and recruiting officers. And so we have to change. So that organizationally, we have to adapt in order to meet this crisis. I think that leans heavily on how we recruit and how we evaluate our recruits and what we're hiring for. So if we know that this is the generation that's coming in and that we look at they value home life balance, we also know that they're going to be serving a community of like-minded generation people. So I think we have to adapt. I mean, the community that they're serving is going to be representative of the community that we're hiring, you know, and so organizationally speaking, we have to kind of rethink everything that we're doing as far as recruiting, hiring, and then of course, how do we keep them once they're there? So breaking that down and going lower into the police car level. When that question comes up is, you know, does a training officer have to be the one to adapt to their trainee, regardless of whether we're talking about generationally or whatever? And my perspective is, I guess that depends on if we view ourselves as leaders. So, you know, whether or not your organization dubs you as part of the chain of command and in an official leadership role as a training officer in the car, you certainly at least are an informal leader. I think everybody agrees with that, and that's one of the attractions to the position. But when we think about what is the job of a leader, well, the organization is going to say, you know, the job of any leader that you have influence and power over people now is to get those people to do the work. And in order for them to get the work, which has been defined by the mission statement of the organization and kind of further executed through policies and practices and tactics and, you know, the best ways that we've done things, in order for our training officers to be able to get the trainees to do the work, we better speak their language.
Right.
And we have to be the ones to adapt in order to be an effective leader, I believe. And I think that's, again, you know, some people don't meet those stereotypes that are defined in these generations by year or whatever the case may be. So it doesn't have to be necessarily an assumption that they're coming in. But when we talk about that work-life balance, I think in order to show a connection in the car, we're going to have to adapt to understanding what motivates them in order for them to get the work done. And that would be our job as a leader.
I mean, I love how you attribute that idea of leadership. And I think, you know, me and Wayne, we teach leadership all over the country, right? And there's no question an FTO is at minimum an informal leader, but really it's your first formal leadership position at your agency. Corey, are we doing all good? How are we doing on the audio right now? God, brother, I don't know. You're struggling, man. Oh, hold on, we're connecting to audio. I see it coming up. I think you should be good here soon. All right, John, I'm going to go to you next, and then we'll jump to Corey with probably with the same thing. Like, you know, when I teach leadership, and Wayne, you probably had the same experience. Do we use generational differences as an excuse, right? Do we use them as an excuse because as an FTO, I can't get along with my trainee or my trainee's not doing what I say? Do we use the differences? Do we blame the generational differences because we're not capable of training or we're not adapting to the training? Do you understand kind of the question I'm asking there?
I do. I think it goes back to Jesse. I think it goes back to if you're that FTO and you have a recruit that's struggling, you got to have that relationship with the recruit to work through those problems, and you got to meet that person in the middle so that you can get the desired results that you need, which is ultimately to get these people past our programs so that they can be good employees for the agency. I'm finding out in our program that we've got on our second group. I think we're 18 to 21, 22-year-olds. They don't want to work overtime. And like what Jesse was saying, we've got to figure out how to motivate those individuals. We have to staff certain functions. Here at the Leon County Sheriff's Office for our FAMU homecoming, they've already canceled leave for next October because we have to have the staffing numbers to make that. So, you know, there's some disgruntled folks, but that generational thing is, you know, back in the day, Mike, and most of the folks here, when we came through law enforcement, we did it because we were told to do it. Do was no questions. You went and did it. What we're finding, and I'm finding out with these young folks, is they want to know the why. Why do you do that? Or why are we doing that? So it takes a little bit more explanation, but to get them where you need them, you got to take that time to explain this is why we do something.
Corey, what do you think about that question? This idea that sometimes we use this idea of generational, and you guys probably have some people, Corey, who've worked for the state police for 20 or 30 years. You know, that there's big generation gaps there with some of the new folks coming in. Do we sometimes use that as an excuse?
Oh, we absolutely do. And we do. We have, in our cadet class right now, I have one that just turned 21, and we just had our longest serving member of the agency retire with 35 years. So we have those huge differences. And, you know, it's not uncommon to have a shift somewhere in the state that has, you know, people who are probably old enough to be grandparents of some of the people they work with. And it's difficult. And we hear it on a daily basis about generational differences. And I think sometimes it's excuses for they're different than we were, but they're doing the same job. And we have to find ways to be inclusive of those differences and take advantage of it, leverage that in helping us get those missions. But I agree with those conversations about filling overtime. We have statutorily mandated things that in Louisiana our agency is required to do, and we struggle just to find those and fill those gaps. So we work hard at filling this generational need, and it's something that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, I always find it interesting too, is that, you know, millennials, now the oldest millennials are in their early 40s, right? And there's some of these guys are probably already lieutenants, you know, so we're still acting like, oh, it's the millennials. Well, we're talking about maybe that second half of the millennial generation and now Gen Zers more than anything else. Hey, Matt, let's go to you real quick. I guess my question are, is when we say generational difference, whatever, is it really just a personality conflict?
I don't know if it's necessarily a personality conflict. I think it goes back to the beginning where we ask who accepts who. I think that you know, history, we've had differences, whether it's generational, cultural, societal, socioeconomic, and we've had to adapt to all of those. I think that this generational difference is just another thing that we have to adapt to. I think that, personality aside, sometimes you can have a salty old dog who gets along just fine with a millennial or someone real young, or you could have the opposite, and they do clash because they just don't understand. But I think that part of it is and having the ability to adapt to the different teaching styles and learning styles. I mean, that's how we police to begin with in our communities, depending on the community that you serve. Whether if you're at a university where you're serving the student population, or if you're in an elderly side of town, you're having to deal with baby boomers. So I think a lot of it, if we just look inward on how we serve, could we do the same thing within our own?
Yeah. No, well said. Well said, Matt. Well said. Hey, Jerry, let's bring you into this conversation as well. Jerry Hunter works at the Institute of Public Safety in Gainesville, Florida, and he's a recruit. I'm sorry, you're the director there, Jerry. I don't want to I know, but you deal a lot with recruits, and you were a FTO for years and a training. You worked in a training at a local agency down there as well. There's a question for you that I think somebody else asked that I think is kind of relevant, right? I work for a police academy. Any advice on how we can prepare recruits for FTO at the academy level? What are you guys doing at your academy to get recruits ready when they go to FTO? And maybe this is something we're missing. Maybe there's that missing link there. I think we've talked about this side before. Do our FTO coordinators, are they liaisoning enough with their local police academies, right, to get the right candidates at their agency and prepare them for that?
That's all really good questions. I don't know that there is a simple answer to it. When I speak, a lot of the times I will talk with the respective agencies to get involvement. If you want to make a better recruit coming out of your academy, get your FTOs involved in your academy. And we've all discussed this, and we've heard it said so many times, and I hate to beat a dead horse because I just brought this up last week, is how many of you guys that are out there have heard or been guilty of saying, forget everything that you learned in the academy, I'm going to teach you how to be the police. What does that say to the new person coming in on what they just spent the past 6 months of their lives doing? That 6 months was all for naught. The preparation starts with a basic knowledge, which is all they're getting, and grooming them for what is going to come. Let's face it, we can run them through scenarios 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's still not going to be as real as it is the day one they hit the street. That's probably the most difficult task that you guys as FTOs have ahead of you is it's now real, and we try our best to do that. One of the things that we've done to help out, to help mitigate some of the training deficiencies coming through the academy is our recruits no longer carry the blue gun that does nothing other than sit in a holster. They carry, they carry simunition handguns. They go out every day, they load their handguns, they get an iteration of loading it, and at the end of the day, they get an iteration of unloading. Anything that you can do, any small step towards, creating an environment where you can, give them the skills that they're going to be using on a daily basis is going to enhance that. You guys, when you brought up the answering the why, John, you're absolutely correct in that. They want to know the why. I just had a conversation with my son-in-law, as a matter of fact, and that was one of the things that he was kind of fussing at me about, is his command staff did not express the why on the decision that they made. It's now it's getting that vocabulary into our FTOs to explain to them why they're doing something, and then even further down the line into our instructors in the academies to get them to explain the why. Difficult to even hit just the peripheral of that question, Mike.
No, brother, I agree with you there. I think that's not an easy question right there. Hey, listen, anybody who wants to ask a question, click on the question button. I'll read it out to the group, put it in the chat boxes. Somebody brought up a really good point, and as a Gen Xer and then baby boomers, remember before us, they called it the silent generation. Then before that, it was the greatest generation. So, but when we started, I started with a lot of Vietnam veterans. I mean, tons of them were still on the job when I started. A lot of military veterans were drawn to law enforcement after their service, so we had a ton. And, I tell people, it's like when I started, I didn't get to talk to my lieutenant, right? You didn't talk to a lieutenant. If you saw a lieutenant, you just kind of stayed out of the way, because if they came to talk to you, it was not a good day, right? Lieutenants didn't talk to patrol officers, especially new ones. I'm not talking about the gritty old guys. I'm talking about the new ones. And then, 20 years, 10, 15 years later I'm a lieutenant and I'm talking to everybody. We're like friends, I'm talking to this and that and stuff. It's like we went from don't ask any question. And I tell this to people too. We were afraid to ask why. That didn't mean we didn't want to know why. We wanted to know why, and usually we just went to the parking lot and bitched for an half hour about why this is the stupidest decision I've ever heard. Why would we be doing this? They have the courage. They've been taught early in their life to ask why throughout their life, and they're going to ask it, right? So we have to be prepared, and we can't feel challenged. Wayne, you teach this all the time. How do we avoid ourselves as FTOs feeling challenged every time we have some new guy asking us why we need to do something?
I think it just goes back to having a touch of humility and a little bit of empathy. And if you think about it, your chief of police started at the exact same location that the rookie sitting in the patrol car did. I'm of the same school that you are, and experienced that young in my career. And then as a lieutenant, like you said, I found myself talking to entry-level officers on first-name basis. That would have never occurred when I started. But I realized later on in my career that if you have that empathy and that humility, and you talk to them and you interact with them, you still have that respect, and you get a greater buy-in. In other words, you get that motivation that's internal. And when you do that, the officers just want to please you, and they'll do anything they can to make you happy.
Yeah, well said, for sure. But it's and you're right, though. It is really, as much as anything else, it's a ego thing. And if we have a little bit more humility, we could probably do a better job there of not getting so wound up.
Yes.
John, you're still dealing with trainees, right? I mean, as an FTO sergeant, how do you work with your FTOs to kind of deal with that why question that we get so much, especially if you have an old FTO that may be a Gen Xer like we are?
Mike, that's a great question. I don't have a whole lot of old FTOs.
Okay, wow, all right. Yeah.
Most of my FTOs are on that same spectrum as the new hires. So they do a very good job of of communicating agency goals, organizational goals. They're really good with that line of it. My problem is, and if anybody wants to help out with this one, is I've got new FTOs and I have so many of them. Part of field training and evaluation, I have a lot of great evaluators. I don't have a lot of great trainers. So that's what I'm having to work with right now, is getting these young people into that training mode, because we are not obtaining those objectives or not meeting those objectives in training. So that's kind of where I'm at with my younger FTOs. I do have senior members, and those are the ones I can kind of let the reins go with. But again, they're on that same spectrum of who we have hired generationally. So maybe someone else, Corey, could speak to that with his agency, or the difference of generations maybe on his side, or Matt.
I'll jump in there, and yeah, we have the same problem. I can remember coming up, and like Mike and Wayne talked about, you didn't ask any questions. And I started in the New Orleans area, had 15 people on a shift. I think that same shift now has 5 or 6. And what I find is our FTO program has become, it's the people that are, there's no way you're going to be an FTO. And then there's the, hey, you're the only ones that are left to be FTOs. And like John said, people that can fill out the evaluation form, but all they're trying to do is, hey, just do it the way I do it. We're not actually teaching them. And so what we've really incorporated is, we have the great benefit where Jerry has people from all over the place coming in, different agencies he's got to contend with. I've got a captive audience. I've got cadets that are mine. I've got FTOs that are mine. And I can bring them in, do an entire full day of FTOs, seeing what we're teaching, how we've taught the academy, what cadets are going to leave knowing. And that's what we really have pushed in our FTO schools is trainers. You're teaching them. We taught them how to be a basic trained police officer. You're teaching them how to be a solo capable, road ready patrol officer. And it's a difference in what our mission is. My mission as a academy trainer is to get them ready for field training. The FTO's job is to get them ready to be out there solo with them, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, handling calls. And it's a difficult situation, and it involves training the FTOs just as much as training the trainees.
Yeah, I love that idea. FTO as a trainer versus FTO as an evaluator. John, what a great point. And Corey, well said. Jesse, I'd love to hear your aspect on this. You've done a lot of research on this idea of between whether it's FTO, and for everybody on the webinar, Jesse is an expert in PTO, police training officer model. I think I said that right, PTO model. And it's kind of the San Jose versus, some people call it the Reno model. In fact, Jesse, I think we're doing a webinar next month, right? On
Yes, sir.
some ideas, aspects of the PTO model. But from a training perspective, that's a great question. Let's go back to that. Trainer versus evaluator, and how do we coach our folks up to be trainers first?
Oh, yeah. So being a training officer in the field, regardless of what program you're using, I've always said is there's no other job like this, because there's no other job. I think even with the medical students, they have a buffer around them of other people who are watching them when they're in the field learning. But there's no other job like being an FTO, where you're responsible for being, number one, a very squared away cop and doing your job on a daily basis. But now you're responsible at the same time to teach somebody. And isn't it true in the policing profession? I joke about this all the time, how it doesn't matter what field you're in, you're a police officer. That's where your expertise is. But our police chiefs are supposed to also be accountants. And I mean, everybody else has people and experts that are brought in. So all of that to say, we hire our police officers to be cops. We don't necessarily hire them to be trainers. And yet we put them in this very challenging position to do both simultaneously. It is easy, very much like what Corey was saying and what John mentioned, was to evaluate them based on, usually we evaluate them based on our processes and expectations. And so there are strengths to being an evaluator, but how do we get our training officers to be good coaches? And the PTO program actually, and there's ways to do hybrids, but one of the emphasis to the PTO program is where it talks about using your trainee as their primary learner. And so you can apply this concept to any program or any model. So kind of piggybacking on the conversations that were happening earlier, why, they ask why, and I've been reading some of the comments and the questions. One of the reasons is, as a mom of 3 kids two who have had some learning challenges, and then of course living through COVID, like I'm sure all of us have had kids or dealt with kids that were living through COVID especially, but they are taught to teach themselves now. There is a huge onus of learning placed on our children that we're hiring into the police field to ask why, because they are taught electronically to explore and teach themselves through processes of failures and expectations and group work, nothing at all like we were taught. So in the classroom, if we think who we're getting, when we were hired, not only did we have the military background and those that were coming in, but we also had those that learned in the sit down, shut up classroom. And so therefore we teach the way we learn, and our generation may be predisposed to teach that same way. But these younger generations are not learning that way when they come to us. That is not the environment that they're coming from. They're taught to ask why. So some of the comments and questions that are out there is, how do we deal with that? Again, striking a balance and learning how to coach, but organizationally, we need to be better at teaching our training officers to be coaches and to prepare them for that. And that doesn't necessarily mean having them go through some specialized course just to get there, but being mentors to those people who are training officers and calling them in and saying, look, I know you're doing a great job being a cop, but here's some strategies that you might consider using. As I do as this might be something that someone would say, as I do as a sergeant, I've got 15 officers under my command. I teach each of them differently. I need you to kind of address your trainees, and here's some strategies that I've learned along the way that you can develop into that coaching. But yes, we are very evaluative centric. There was a question that was posed. I thought it was great. It was, what about incorporating self-evaluations in addition to DORs? And I think that's crucial. These trainees that we're getting, again, they're journaling, they're doing all this stuff in school, talking about what they need to do better about being a learner. And so tapping into that, I think, is really key. And there was also another question about, and I'll just tie in this question that's still going to have a big chunk hanging out there, but how can we successfully train lateral officers who are actually older than our young trainees? And I think that's a really good question. I'll just throw in my 2 cents kind of related to coaching them. Again, if we develop our training officers with the mindset of, this is somebody who is, your job is to develop them so that the agency can keep them and not make them a replicate of you, then that philosophy can cross all generational lines. But kind of out there, Mike, I thought that was that Jacob put out there, that was a really good, interesting topic.
Right. Jacob put he put a question in the question section as well, right? Can we reverse the field a bit and talk about younger officers being FTOs and how we can successfully train laterals? Great. Let's give me 1 second, because we have another one. Corey is kind of saying the same thing, right? Corey is, I'm 32 and I've been in law enforcement since 2009. With older generations going into law enforcement, how do you overcome the attitude is, I've got more life experience, so I know better than you? Which is really interesting that both, we didn't, as a group, or at least me kind of preparing the questions, what a great thing is that let's do it in reverse, right? Let's talk about younger generations having to train older folks. All right, after we get that question done, Andrew, get ready. I'm going to come to you here in a little bit, maybe in a couple minutes, because we're going to talk about, from the corrections side of things, how are you seeing generational differences between like the 21, 18? I mean, you guys are starting corrections officers at 18, 19 years old now over at Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, right? So how is those trainers that are maybe 35, 36 and that interaction between them? Oh, I'm going to come to you in a second because I want to get something from the correction side. Matt, let's take a stab at this idea of how do younger folks deal with training older folks? Oh, Matt, I can't hear you now.
You got me now?
I hear you. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember that actually examiner, and she wanted to come into the road patrol. So she went through the academy, and I had her, and she was probably 20, 30 years my senior. So it was very a different type of trainee, definitely having an older trainee. I think that's, you do, you should, yeah, take their life experience, take advantage of that. They're coming off of coming into scenes with a different mindset. So nothing of it is wrong. It's making sure that they're applying the laws, applying your policies and procedures appropriately. But I definitely can see where having the older trainee, how that can be an advantage to you. The keeping them spry and keeping them alert and keeping them up to technology that we're using now. But I, it's a give and take sort of situation. And I think that they can be, some of your best trainees because they're used to feedback, they're used to being critiqued. So I think that isn't necessarily a bad thing that you have to work through, just as if it were the reverse.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble with your audio, Matt. No, we got most of it. I think maybe the question more is like, what about when that older trainee is a little bit more stubborn, like the idea, like I have more life experience, or I've been around the block, or I was already a cop for 20 years. You can't teach me anything. And I find this very ironic because the former president of SEFTOA, right, a 20-year veteran of Gainesville Police, retired captain, now is in an FTO program in Aurora, Colorado. And I think Rob is pretty humble, and I think he'll accept it very well. But it'll be a one heck of a perspective when he comes back, right? And kind of gives us his, because he's going to have a training officer that's maybe 23, right? 24 years old. All right, so John, you got a lot of younger training officers. What about those? Do you have some people coming in, not lateral as much, maybe some older officers, people second career in life, and do you see the reverse generational conflicts?
Absolutely. I mean, I try to schedule when I have that uh new employee with multiple years of experience. They're also, because of that experience, Mike, they have that humility that we talked about earlier. So they want to help that young FTO. And so I try to take that senior officer with a young FTO that I have, and I tell my FTOs, you need to learn from this person. They are bringing 20 years of institutional knowledge. They are bringing multiple years of life experience. So for the young FTO, I tell them this is a teaching moment for you. You just have to get them through our policy and procedures. And I hope to create that two-way learning street with that senior member and that younger FTO. And it really, really works out well for us. I haven't had too many stubborn or senior recruits that said, that's not the way I used to do it, or that type of thing. The young people help the old people with their computer skills and digital skills, and the older folks help them in regards to even their teaching techniques and how to approach things, because they've had those interpersonal, inter-office relationships to help with that communication process. So it's really a very advantageous learning scenario, and I always try to put a senior officer with my youngest FTOs.
Well, I love how when you go straight to your young FTO and say, you are so lucky that you're about to have this older, whatever, more seasoned person in your car take advantage of it, and you're setting them up for success, right? That's a wonderful attitude, John. And I think a lot of people can learn from that. All right, Andrew, here we come. We're coming to you. What is going on in the corrections environment? I know JSO is pushing hard, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, massive organization in Florida, and you guys are pushing hard to recruit, and you guys are getting some your corrections officers at 18, 19 years old, but they may be being trained by a much older person, or vice versa. What kind of issues are you seeing in your training environment there at your county jails?
Pretty much the same, dealing with the police and the correction, because we're combining a little effort here at the academy as well as in our FTO unit, being that they're two separate training units, of course, but we're combining them because of the fact of we want them to understand both sides of the picture. So when we're bringing in someone that young, we do run into that, hey, we got veterans for the few veterans we have left that may meet resentment, whether it's with the fellow officer or whether it's with an FTO itself. And the police side is having that same problem where you have someone that's been on so long of value, great value, but a lot of value may be tainted, or you may have old habits. And it's one thing to have a good shortcut, but first we want to train them how to do something correct and then show them the reason why this shortcut works and it's safe and it's great to use. But in essence, we meet resistance on both behalf in some cases, because you have those who, especially through COVID, have been pretty tainted and tired. And the shorter we are, the more everybody's attitude is just to the left. So we start out first encouraging both, as some of you mentioned, you give praises on both behalves. Both sides can learn something. The younger generation, or I like to say this generation of people, can bring something to the older generation, or those who've been on for a while, and vice versa. So when we are meeting those ones who, for the few that are set in their ways, we ask them, please don't come in with the mindset of just being so stern. This doesn't mean to be so humble you let them get away with murder, because as I listened to you earlier, a lot of the training in some cases seem to be watered down, or we seem to let a lot go because we're in desperate times. We're needing more in. So, and many people know that. That's why they're so quick to get in and say, this is not for me, and quit, but not really challenging themselves. So we still want them to get that challenge and feel like they're earning something, but in the same token, respecting that they are coming to the table with something. Even young ones, we hire them in at 18 or 19 or whatever they are, because we're actually tapping middle schools and high schools now, prepping them to come here. Even with the local college, we have it where if they do, I think 3 years in, that last year, they actually can come on the police side and just straight come into the academy. So we're building on that. With the correction side, we're bringing them in earlier to just take a look around, not just once or twice, we get a feel. On the police side, in their recruit status going through FTO, we have them now working at the jail at least once a month, just so they get acclimated to that line of work, as well as getting acclimated to the streets. So as I'm looking at inmates acting out at a young age, as a new person coming in with authority to take people's rights, we're able to get them used to different cultures and attitudes and actions. And so it allows them to make a better judgment call than to look at something fresh out and say, that must be horrible danger there. Let me go to the extremes on everything.
Yeah.
Correction side, we're doing the same thing to de-escalate a lot, helping them basically balance that emotional intelligence, which you do get from a lot of veterans because they know how to chill the heck out. But you do have a few that still teach that, go get them, beat them down, stomp them, do the whole nine. And hey, those days over with. It shouldn't take cameras to correct you. Unfortunately, cameras have corrected a lot of our foolishness. But in essence, same token, we have those who have questions. They're coming into a new environment. This is totally scary. So we're asking for the officers to have that more nurturing spirit, or as we often talk about, have a warrior mindset and gut, but have an exposure and an openness to be that guardian. And so it's been working, but it's been a challenge on both behalves, in FTO as well as in recruiting.
Yeah, one follow-up real quick. Did you say that your police, your law enforcement side, during FTO, you have them in the jail one day a month?
Correct. Well, this is something we're incorporating because although we call a sheriff agency, we'll combine, but the line is drawn in the sand. So that combination allows me to say, well, that's y'all job. Y'all do it over there. We know nothing about it and we don't care. And that started a while ago when I come out to the academy and I'm like, hold on, I'm doing all your scenarios. We only have a few for corrections, but you have a million that I'm doing. And you know nothing about my side, but although dual certified, I know your side more than you know our side, so you can criticize so openly. We both have separate duties that can be wearing on each other. So the respect level to get the officer to respect the other side and vice versa. to get corrected, to respect what the officers are doing. It lessens that tension, and it also allows new recruits to be humble. Because if you think you can come in, unlike many sheriff agencies will bring you in straight through as a deputy first in the jails and then send you to the streets. Here you can say, corrections beneath me. Well, not anymore, because now you have to work it. You get a feeling of it. So it allows them to kind of unite more of that brotherhood we speak of.
I think it's an incredible idea, right? Because I mean, I just think the amount of understanding and empathy will explode because, you know, at least now as a cop, I had no idea what you do in a jail other than I bring you there and I drop you off. And then you tell me we can't take them back over here. And then I get mad and you get mad and everybody gets mad. But if you see it from both sides, wow, that's a wonderful idea. I think that's another great learning point from today's webinar. I think
We actually got a training now.
um,
We doing our in-service this year was combined. Being
Wow,
that you bring them
great.
to the back door. Oftentimes you have someone, let's say they're in the tar. So they total lockdown, but we often either put them on the solid put ground or the sidewalk, or you're there in the car. So to prevent any further injuries, illnesses, asphyxiations, anything, we opted to say, hey, how about us just bring the chair out to you? Now they're still locked down, but we can secure them in a chair. They can still be observed. Everything is being noted. Nothing changes. We've added appendages to their drop down as far as what they do in their report. We add our little sheet of paper to that. It's also uploaded to that through PowerDMS, and allows them to be able to still have a safe individual that's still locked down. So we got to combine with the officer shows how they get them out of the vehicle, how to remove certain portions of the restraint. And now the COs show them how you restrain them in the chairs and what duties the officer will help in doing that. So it really combines them both together, because the salad port is a challenging area. You want them out, and we got to receive them, but we got to go through all these steps and making sure we can receive them. And now everybody is slowly, methodically working together.
Yeah.
And it's not such a finger point issue.
I think if everybody understands both sides, I think that's a wonderful idea. All right, so we're going to open it up to questions. We've already answered some. I think we touched on most of the topics. We only got about 5 or 6 minutes left. Anybody have any questions from the group? And please, I put a flyer in there in the chat for golly, there's a lot of chat in between. I put a flyer in there for the FTO conference. If you need to download it to apply to come to the conference, we'd love for you to apply. We should have almost 150 people there this year. Advanced Police Concepts is one of the original founding corporate sponsors, or is the original founding corporate sponsor for Southeastern Field Training Officer Association and the conference. All right. Any other questions for the group in the panel? Any other last thoughts while we're waiting for questions? Anybody, any last thoughts?
Mike, if I could add,
Yes, for sure.
looking at the article that you sent out, one of the things that kind of jumped out to me that was glaring, and I think we missed talking about it, is law enforcement, much like a stint as a minister is a calling, and we're seeing less and less people with that calling, likely for a number of reasons. But it's glaring that to me at least, that people are not wanting to get into it, not because it's something that they haven't thought about doing, but maybe they're just not led in the right direction. And that falls on each one of us that are in the profession today. We've got to set that example and be that image that they want to come into and want to emulate as much as possible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's no doubt about that, Jerry. We do have some questions jumping in. How are you guys training the younger generation to navigate city streets? Do you still use paper maps or GPS? Anybody?
Anything
Yeah, we're
to get the job done. We allow them to use their phones, Apple Maps, navigation on our MDCs on the computer. We had, believe it or not, our agency 20 years ago had a discussion because a recruit actually paid $300 for a GPS. And the question was, Are we going to allow them to use GPS? And we basically said, listen, it's a ready available product. If this helps them with their geographical skills and allows them and orients them, we allow them to use it. So we try to teach everything, all the tools that are available to the recruit.
Anybody else? Matt, what do you guys do?
Yeah, we're trying to mirror the FTO as much as we can to a solo officer. So if it's officer, it should be available to the trainee.
All right, makes sense. Anybody else want to jump in? Corey, what do you guys teach over there in the state police?
We're very much the same. Our last class, I got that a lot. You know, they're using their state issued phones and the GPS, and some of the FTOs had a problem with it. And I said, as long as they're not drawing it out and spending 20 minutes trying to figure out how to put the address in there, if they're able to put it in quickly and efficiently, I use the GPS. I use the GPS when I get in my unit and I drive somewhere. So why wouldn't they? Now, we encourage them, hey, you need to learn where these important areas are and you need to pay attention. Don't rely on it, but you use it as a training tool and use it when it's appropriate. And it seems to work out. I still encourage them in the academy. Hey, on your days off, go drive around, especially for us. I've got people that are moving to an entire different part of the state that they don't even know where the hospital's at. So tell them, get out, drive around on your day off and learn those state highways, learn the numbers. But I agree with everybody, is whatever works and whatever's available, you know, it's not cheating. It's getting the job done effectively.
I think there's some good chat messages in here. I think, you know, like if you work for an agency, you should know how to get to the hospital from anywhere in the, you know, and you should be able to know how to get to the PD from anywhere in the city without a GPS. But if you're going to a residential spot somewhere, I understand. I think we have to adapt to new stuff. But I think at some point we also have to understand that, you know, hurricane comes through, bad natural disaster. We have to be prepared to go back to the old ways and try to figure out how to get to things also, right? So I think it's a combination there. It's a combination there. But yeah, I think we have to allow new technology. Jerry, are you answering this question? We have to break the cycle thinking these kids know how to do the job out of the academy. Oh, Steve. Okay, Steve's my buddy from Evansville, Indiana.
I just was putting in, he's 100% correct on this. It's called basic training for a reason. I mean, anybody that spent any time in the military, you didn't know how to do your job when you come out of basic training in the military. You knew basically how to put on the uniform and make sure that you were squared away enough to get through the next iteration of training. Steve just, to me, hit the nail on the head. We gotta break that cycle of thinking, because none of us, when we come out, knew how to do the job. And I think that's where a lot of it, I see it, even in new instructors out here, they expect the trainees to be at a level that they're nowhere near going to be ready for. Sometimes it almost seems as if we dumb them down coming through the academy, in that we pump them full of so much information. They've been drinking through a fire hose for 6 months. They can no longer use the common sense that they come into the academy with to sort things out. They get scared of making a mistake rather than, as Jesse put it, when I went through the PTO model with her years ago, it's called failing forward, right? And it's an important aspect of what we do. Yeah,
no doubt. I think and I fell into the same trap. Like, what are they teaching at the police academy, right? It's supposed to be completely the basic method, and of course, everybody comes out at a different level. Even brand new officers who have no prior experience, some people have a more intuitive understanding of how to do law enforcement. They may come from, you know, their father or mother was in law enforcement. So we have to start where they are. And I think that's hard for some people, right? We got to start where the trainee is, not where we want the trainee to be, right? Let's start where they are. All right, I think we're gonna call it. Now listen, if anybody can stay on and wants to answer some more questions, but I think we got through a ton of stuff. I think this has been a wonderful experience. I hope we had 52 people on the webinar and from all over the country. I hope a lot of you are coming to our FTO conference. We'd love to see you there. And so we can carry on this conversation. As much as anything else, it's a networking event, right? Like-minded people who honestly want to make other people better will be at this event. People like Andrew Lovings, you know, he's on our board too. He's on the board also. I'm not on the board. He's on the board also from a corrections aspect. And I can't, Andrew, you must have had about 10 or 12 people just constantly coming up to you, asking you questions at our last conference, right? I mean, I saw you all the time interacting with folks from other corrections agencies. Oh, you got to unmute, Andrew.
Yeah, definitely that. Many people want to know just that aspect of how does this conference apply to the correction arena. So although the conference may speak of police training, in essence, the whole FTO setting applies to wherever we're training at. And that mindset that you brought up earlier concerning that humility of it all, the age and time, the brackets of where you're at in your career matters a lot. And if you grade everybody and kind of meet them where they're at, then it makes it easier. If you meet them where you expect them to be, then it's going to be oftentimes disappointing. And that's either going to be received negatively by them or you're going to display negative in your training. So if we keep that balance of saying, I'm going to meet them where they're at. Now, that means if we challenge them here and there, it gives them hurdles so we know how fast they're going, how fast they can grow. But in essence, we're trying to build the greatest officer we can. We can't expect them to be there based on the academy because the academy is teaching them state curriculum. You know, they're not necessarily teaching them day-to-day activities in your particular city, zone, district, or area.
That's correct. All right. I don't see any other questions. I think that's about it, everybody. So we appreciate all the interaction in the chat room. It was incredible. Thank you to everybody who participated. And like I said, I will be sending an email out to everybody who either registered or participated today with a link to this webinar. So you can share it. Please share the recording with as many folks as you want. I think this is really good information for anybody to have. And I think that does it for everybody. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. We'll see you all later.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Jesse, did you see the message from Paul May? Can you answer that one on PTO? He just sent it a little while ago.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm scrolling through them, but yes, I'll answer it. Let me find it. Jesse, where can I find more info? Okay, do we have his credentials? Like his
I'm sure we
email
got-
or anything?
Yeah, I'm sure I have it somewhere. Might be easier just to ask him for it.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. He typed it in there for you.
Thank you, Paul. You can still hear. Very good. I got it, Paul. I will send you more information than you probably care to have. Anything. But we do have a webinar coming up too that it's about an hour long and it'll be full of the basics.
Right. And Paul, if you want more information on Jesse, also teaches a class, a 2-day class. We'd love to bring it to New Mexico.
Oh my gosh, that's my home state. I mean, my whole family still lives there.
You see, it's meant to be, Paul. She wants to come to New Mexico. All right.
I'm missing that green chili.
See you next month on the webinar, and then maybe we can work out a plan to get Jesse out to New Mexico.